Hey, good morning and welcome to today's takeover of the Cuppa with Katie show. And I'm bringing you a interview series called Next Level Love. And I'm interviewing a different amazing woman every day for 2 weeks. And we're talking about finding love in the second part of your life, because it is possible. And today we're speaking with Jeanne Andrus, and she's joining us all the way from Louisiana. Hey, Jeanne.
Hey, Katie, how are you?
I'm really, really good. Thank you. I'm really buzzing off having, these conversations. I'm so inspired, so inspired.
I think I'm buzzing on coffee. It's very early.
Yeah, I know. You're amazing. You got up at 6 o'clock. You got up earlier than 6. It's 6 a.m. for you now, though, right?
Right.
Yeah, you're amazing. Very early. Thank you. Yeah, it is. Thank you so much. So Jeanne and I actually met a few years ago through another interview series I ran called My Menopause. And we were talking all things peri-menopause because I'd recently discovered I was in peri-menopause. And Jeanne was one of my experts on that series that taught me so much. And Jeanne, do you know, we're getting thousands of views of that series. Like, it's so popular. I get people signing up to it every day still now. And what are we, 4 years?
It's been
4 years on. Yeah. 4 years on.
And of course, every year, thousands and literally millions of women age into the situation of being in menopause, perimenopause. And so it's a perennial topic.
Oh, well, this is it. And I think, we're all a lot of women are waking up to the importance of getting educated on it. So it's not such a shock to the system. But that kind of leads into what you do. So before we even begin to talk about your amazing, beautiful love story and how you found love in the second part of your life, as I did, I'd love for you to share a little bit about what you're doing in the world.
So I work with women in menopause, and I'm currently actually sort of transitioning into more of an education role because I see it as so important for women to understand what's happening to them in this part of their lives. And people can connect with me at menopause.guru. And I'm really trying to help women understand not only what is going on, but what their options are to reduce the symptoms and make it more livable, and really understand too the opportunities we have at this part of our lives, because they're very, very different than we had coming out of high school or college, or into that first part of our lives where there were a lot of things open to us. And now it feels like things are closing off, but it's really very different than that. It's really opening up.
It's as you're saying that, I'm feeling like it's the emergence of the wise woman, isn't it? The wise woman archetype. And we're bringing our wisdom into the world. And we can do that in a way that feels really true and aligned to us. We've got that choice now. Yeah.
So it's been a maligned and scary and disappointing time for a lot of people, but it really shouldn't be. It's really there for a lot of great reasons.
Absolutely. So we have to restrain ourselves from talking about that and
I can go on for many hours,
right? And we could, and it's an amazing topic. But if you want to know more about menopause, if you're exploring your own menopause and perimenopause, check out my my menopause interview series. I'll throw the link in here when we finish this interview. Wonderful. And Jeanne and I do an amazing, at least 60-minute conversation, deep dive into how you can support yourself. So it's all over there. Let's talk love today, though. Let's not talk menopause. Let's talk love. So, and hello, by the way, to those of you who are here live. Emma, you said hi, Emma. Hey, Sarah. Anyone else joining, just say hi. And if you're watching the replay, just type #replay so I can check out who's seen the video. But Jeanne, where shall we begin with your love story? How far back do you want to go?
Well, let's first talk about a little bit about how I lost my first marriage, because it's related to menopause. if that's okay with you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. And I think it's a very relevant topic.
Yeah. So my major symptom of early perimenopause for me was depression and a little bit of anger or a lot of anger. Anyway, my ex and I was doing a road warrior thing with a big corporate company. And I let that get in the way of my marriage, along with a few other things. But we kind of just drifted apart, and our son was out of college and on his own. And I think it's a real typical thing that we let everything just sort of fall apart. And when we did, I kind of I cried for a month, honestly. I didn't expect this to happen. I didn't expect to lose that marriage. It was not supposed to happen. And I was really super depressed. And I sort of came out of it after that crying jag and said, I can let this kill me. I was literally eating myself to death. I was gaining 2 to 3 pounds a week, just on ridiculous foods and liquor binges, alcohol binges. And I wasn't doing well. I was not a happy person, and I was not a healthy person, and I wasn't doing anything good for myself. So it took me probably a week to kind of decide that this was not going to be the way I was going to end my life. And I wasn't just going to go down into being the 300-pound woman who sat in the house with muumuus on. And so I decided I was going to get healthy. And getting healthy meant getting active. It meant eating right. I won't say I wasn't obsessed with losing weight, but because I sort of became that way a little bit. But I was really more obsessed with getting healthy and happy. And I started doing adventure sports. So I moved from my house that I loved in New Hampshire that I lost in the mess to Alabama to be with my mom. My mom was in her late 80s and needed more help than I could give her from New Hampshire. For those of you in Australia, that's sort of like one side of the country to another. About 1,800 miles. And I moved into an area that had a lot of outdoor activities available to it. There was a river to kayak on. There was a mountain biking trails. I started running. Never had been a runner in my life, and I started running.
Actually, Jeanne, just pause there for a second. How old were you at this point?
I was 48.
48. Okay. All right. So 48, you decided I'm not going to give in to the grief of the end of my marriage and eat and drink myself to death. I'm going to get fit and healthy. And you went into adventure sports at 48.
Right. And
yeah.
So my ex and I had sea kayaks, long boats for going out on rivers and out on the ocean. But the area I was in had whitewater, which is a very different kind of kayaking. So I had to find friends who kayaked, whitewater kayaked. And I found somebody online who was a woman, just a friend. And she said, I go kayaking up on the river near you. And I go with these people from Louisiana, which is about a 5-hour drive. So she met me one Saturday morning, and we were going to go kayaking with these people from Louisiana. And we throw our boats on top of the car, and we're driving up to the put-in point. And we're driving with this couple I'd never seen before. And they asked me how I got to this area, which, it's not an area that people just move into because they really love it. It's a great area, but it's, it's sort of a backwater town in Alabama.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, well, I moved down to be with my mom after I divorced. And from the front seat, this adorable little 20-year-old girl goes, "Jessie single?" And I'm like, okay, I really don't want to be set up right now. I was really only about 4 months past my actual divorce.
Right.
And I was like, nah, I'm not interested. Not interested. I'm done with relationships, done with love, done with sex, so the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we get up there on the river, and he's a really nice guy. And he's very attentive in a caring sort of way. He's making sure that I'm not, I didn't know whitewater at all. So he was making sure I wasn't getting into trouble.
Right. Easy to do in whitewater. Yeah.
Easy to do in whitewater. Fortunately, it's a really simple river. And if you flip over, it's big and wide and easy to handle. So he was really nice that first day, and we went out to dinner afterwards and sat at the campfire for a while, and just really nice people. The next day I got up, and I was going to be late getting up to the put-in, and he waited for me. That was nice. This is a nice person. And when I had to leave a little bit early, he said, "Oh, I need to leave anyway, so let me go on down the river with you." Playboating is fun. But you sit there for hours sometimes at a feature. And I know that explaining whitewater is kind of fun. And he was really, really nice. And then that was the last weekend of the kayaking season for the winter. They literally turn off the river.
Right. And tell me, actually, just so that I've got my timeline right here. So your marriage ended when you were 48.
Mm-hmm. And this was toward the end of that year. So I was
towards the end of that year.
Yeah, I have a December birthday, so I was coming up on my 49th birthday.
Okay.
Literally Halloween weekend. And so I didn't see him for 5 months because he lived in Louisiana. He lived in Louisiana, 5 hours away. Yeah. I lived in Wetumpka. I was traveling for my job still. And so I didn't see him for 5 months. And when I saw him again, it was, that now there was some interest there. I was maybe a little more ready, but I had continued to work on myself all winter long. I was feeling good about who I was. And I think that was what led to everything that happened.
So that just really hit my heart when you said that. I was feeling really good about who I was. Yeah. It's bringing tears to my eyes. Like, I really feel that. I mean, that's key, right? It's key to calling in next level love. Yeah.
It was absolutely key. And we talk about, sometimes after a divorce, we talk about that first marriage as that get back on the horse. This is sort of a throwaway relationship. So I wasn't sure that this was going to last. I didn't necessarily see it lasting. There were a lot of things about my husband which you wouldn't necessarily think that I would be in a relationship with him. I hate to sound snobby, but I was a professional person. I was in computers and doing a lot of high-level computer consulting
Yeah.
around the country, and he is in a pretty much blue-collar job,
Right.
or was until April 1st when he retired.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of like, okay, this is maybe not gonna work, but it just kept growing, and it kept growing because I allowed it to grow, and because he was amazingly, respectful of who I
Mm.
was. He was amazingly attentive to who I was, and he had his own sense of self. Now, I will tell you that I married probably the last existing 56-year-old bachelor, because we were 56. He was 57 and I was 56 when we finally got married. Um, it took us a really long time because my mom
Wow.
was still alive, and we shared a house, and it was
Yeah.
just not going to work for another
Mm.
person to come into the house. But he was a bachelor when I met him. He was a 49-year-old bachelor when I met him. Uh, and that was fascinating to me, that he
So
had
does that, so bachelor, so never married,
never married. He had
no children, or
nope, no
no
children.
children?
So he didn't come in with a whole lot of that kind of baggage.
Hmm.
But he came in with a lot of, this is the way I live.
Right. So yes, of course, he would have been quite perhaps set in his ways. He'd been
Yeah.
doing it on his own for so many years. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but he was very, very open.
Mm.
He says I'm the best thing that ever happened to him, which is awesome.
Oh.
And he says in a lot of ways he feels like nothing ever worked out for him before because he was waiting for me.
And I believe that to be true. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. You're his one. You're
Yeah.
his one.
And,
Yeah.
my ex and I created something amazing together.
Mm.
He's now 42 in a couple of weeks. No, 41 in a couple. 40? I don't know. He was maybe I can't do the math this morning.
And I'm not going to try and do the maths. I'll embarrass myself.
Yeah. Anyway, and my two amazing grandchildren and my daughter-in-law. So there was something from my first marriage that was very important,
Yeah.
to come into this world.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that that's true.
Mm.
But it's possible to outgrow a relationship and find a new one that's even better.
Yeah. Well, this is the story. I mean, this piece about outgrowing a relationship in midlife, it's a very common story, isn't it? And I'm sure in the work that you're doing, you're hearing it again and again and again.
Yeah. And actually, my current husband and I
Yeah.
wrote a book called "Where Is My
You
Wife and
did.
What Have You Done with Her?" I've actually written several books, but it's because I think our second love could also be our first love.
Mm.
I think my ex and I made mistakes, and the mistake was that we didn't take the time to concentrate on what our relationship did when it got old and it got
Mm.
tired,
Mm.
and I didn't know what was happening to me. Literally, I I remember going to my gynecologist when I was in my late 40s, and she says, "Well, do you have any questions for me?" And if she had said the word menopause and that, this was going to happen, maybe I would have understood what was going on in my body. Honestly, when we broke up, I didn't get it. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't feel I knew I was different, but I
Yeah.
didn't know why or how.
Yeah.
And he had no patience for it. Um, so
Mm.
that, that relationship maybe, maybe you didn't have to die. Maybe it
Mm.
could have been second love is equal to first love. But
Mm.
I think the truth of the matter was I had to fall in love with myself
Mm. Mm.
in order to be the person that could be in love with someone else.
I want to talk to you about that. Because that's obviously the bit that I'm like super passionate about. And that's the work that you probably are alluding to that you did in between kayak seasons, right? You were there down and dirty doing the work.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to pick up on something you said because it's so relevant for me. I mean, I'm in perimenopause, and there are the times with this that if I didn't have my husband's support, I don't know where I would be. Like there are times that, like, it means so much to me that he is patient and kind and understanding, and he's just, he even has it in his calendar. We both have it in our calendar. There's 1 week every month where it's like, in my calendar it says be kind and gentle to yourself, and I think in his calendar it says what does he say? It says wifey's delicate time or something like that. So it's that week where, and it's not the week of my period, it's the week, it's actually, bizarrely, it's 2 weeks before my period starts.
That makes sense.
Does it?
Yeah.
So I have a week, and then I have a week of being a little bit sensitive, but I'm okay. And then my period comes, I'm a bit teary.
Yeah.
And he's got it marked in his calendar. And he's like, if I'm starting to feel a bit off, he'll look at his calendar. He's like, darling, we're getting to that time of the month. And he's super supportive, and I need that.
That's awesome. And here's what I would warn you. At some point things start changing, and that date will not be as solid. It's
already happening. This is already happening. Yeah.
So
yeah.
And here's the thing. If you think we don't know what's going on about menopause, which we don't,
right.
Most of us come into it not knowing enough. Oh my God, the guys have no clue. They have no
it's really hard on them. Hard on them.
And they don't realize, they may have subconsciously been tracking your moods up and down your cycle, and now they're all over the place. And they're deeper and more affecting, and they last longer, and so they don't understand it at all. And so that's one of the reasons I wrote Where Is My Wife? Because they need that explanation. And honestly, every guy has lived with menopausal women probably most of his life, but he doesn't get it. And it's not because his mother went through it. And maybe maybe he was around his grandmother when she was going through it. So we don't really understand that difference that's so key to who we are and who we become. And the guys are lost too. So, when I actually sat down to write it, I talked with a husband of a friend, and it was quite an embarrassing conversation because I was writing the chapter that was about really female anatomy. And I said, so do you know? And he was, a good lover from my friend's report. So he knew what was on the outside. I said, so do you know what's above that? What after the VJ, what comes next? And he had no clue. And he had no clue about ovaries and fallopian tubes and uterus and all of these things that go into it. And then we don't know how our adrenals and all of these other things are tied to that. So they don't know. And so I was lucky because even in my early 50s, I didn't get it as much. It wasn't until I started really working with midlife women in terms of I started out, I quit my corporate job and became a personal trainer. And a lot of my clients were midlife women. And then that was when I started noticing all the patterns and all the needs around it.
Yeah.
And I was lucky that my current husband was so sweet and kind and gentle about everything.
This is what I want to hear from you, actually. This is a really good point, and I get asked this quite often when I'm being interviewed, because in my so I was single 8 years before I met my now husband. So I wasn't knowingly perimenopausal. It wasn't obvious, although I'm sure there was hormonal shifts happening for me. But it was in the first 6 months of meeting my husband. So it was probably, we were like 5-6 months in. So proper like honeymoon stage, so loved up. Everything moved very quickly for us. So we're very quick at that point. We were moving in together 6 months in. And I started getting dreadful night sweats, like proper, I had to wrap myself in a towel at nighttime for bed. Dreadful cystic acne.
Oh,
it was horrible. So here's me, brand new relationship. I've been waiting 8 years for this. My dream man comes in, we move in together. I immediately get cystic acne, awful night sweats, and then anxiety and depression.
Oh,
boom! It hit me like a train.
You got a really nice setup.
It hit me like a train, and I was like, "What is this?" And that was the beginning of my journey. That's when you and I met. And at the time, thank God I'd called in an empowered man, because even before I understood what was happening with me, he was already very patient, very sensitive, very compassionate. Thankfully, I'd done a lot of work on myself. So I was an emotionally pretty masterful woman at that point, but I was far from perfect. But thank God I'd done the work I'd been doing all the years I had, because when this hit me, it took all my tools, all my knowledge, working all my daily spiritual practice, all the things suddenly were my huge support system. And thankfully he was very understanding. It sounds to me like when you met your guy, you were in the midst of it as well, and he was immediately supportive and understanding.
And I had way less knowledge than you did.
Yes, right.
So because I went out and talked to my gynecologist, and she said, let's check and see if you still need to be on birth control. And all she told me was, yes, you still need to be on birth control. And so I sort of had this notion that, I knew the word menopause, but I really didn't have any clue what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I will say I was lucky. I did a lot of things right. Unknowingly. And so my work is around it would have been way too easy for me to do the wrong things.
Right.
Frankly, it would have been way too easy for Jesse to do the wrong things, have the wrong expectations of me. And so that's why I do the work I do, which is trying to educate and help women understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And they're guys as well. So I wrote one book for women. Actually, I wrote 4 books for women. And
you are a prolific writer. So Jeanne, yeah, I know you do. Okay, let's go back a little bit again. We're moving up and down the timeline here. Let's go back to the work. I'm really interested to know what that was for you, and what areas were you focused on when you were doing your work to be ready for him?
So for me, a lot of it was physical. A lot of it
Mm-hmm.
was losing 80 pounds and becoming active. But for me, the adventure stuff, the adventure sports were
Mm.
so much fun. And I got such a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
So I I was running half marathons. I like half marathons. I don't like marathons.
Wow.
It's just way too much training. Um,
Yes.
I'm slow. Okay, I'm slow. So training 5 hours on a Saturday to make that mileage is like, no,
Yeah, yeah, no,
not gonna happen.
it's a lot. Yeah.
Too much. I was doing adventure races.
Mhm.
Um, I was rock wall climbing. Um,
Wow.
and so there was such a sense of accomplishment for me that it changed my perception of myself.
Yeah.
And I was always the non-athlete, never was an athlete as a kid. So when I tell you that I became a runner and I became a whitewater kayaker and I started mountain biking and running adventure races and all of that stuff, that was stuff that I didn't think I could do.
I am so inspired by you right now because to know that you were 48, 49 while you were doing this,
Mhm. I'm
that's
running a trail relay race this fall, which is
how old are you now?
I'm
Are you
65.
65 running a
Yeah.
trail relay race?
Yes.
Amazing. That's very inspiring. Mm.
So yeah, it's exciting. It's fun. But what it does is it gives you a sense of accomplishment. And for me, that's
Yes.
where I needed to start.
Yeah.
And eventually that turned into a whole lot of work on self-love and self-esteem and
Mm.
um, turning a lifelong fear of rejection around and becoming a whole different person. Um, and
Yeah.
now I do a lot of self-development work. I
Mm.
still do. And
Mm.
I do it because it's important to get up every morning and love yourself,
Yes. Yes, it is.
even at six
Ta-
o'clock in the morning.
Even at 6 o'clock in the morning. Tell me, that lifelong piece around rejection, did that have an impact on your first marriage?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
Um,
Do you
I'm
mind
an
sharing
Yeah,
how?
I'm an adopted person. So
Hmm.
as an adopted person, I was relinquished by my birth mother
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
a month old, and then I was in foster care for 2 months. So I lost two mothers within 3 months of being born.
Mm.
And I don't think in the 50s they didn't have any clue what they were doing to babies when they did
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we had no place to put that, no
Yeah.
way to interpret it, no way to
Yeah.
um, feel through it. And all we knew was the people that had cared for us were gone, and then there were these other people in their
Yeah.
place. And so I am a super self-reliant human being, um,
Mm.
and learning to trust and understand that when I was hurt or upset or I was feeling all of those feelings, that my first turning to my first husband was not a big it was almost impossible. And he said I would stiffen up. He would go to hug me and I would stiffen up. And obviously that's hard on him.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was very hard on him. Uh, but I
Yeah.
didn't see what was going on. So that's actually been a trip that I've had to take many times. I mean,
Mm.
I feel like that's a huge 2 steps forwards and 3 steps back for me.
Is it, would you, I mean, my language for that would be doing the healing process around that would be inner child work and working with that wounded inner child and the 1-month-old, the 3-month-old,
Absolutely.
and onwards.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it takes a lot of inner child work. It takes a lot of outer work. It takes a lot of rethinking relationships and knowing.
Yeah, it's a big part of it, isn't it? Redefining what relationship even means to you. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be in whatever relationship dynamic you desire? A friend.
What does it mean to be a friend? I'm the person who will inadvertently reject someone else because I'm so self-reliant that if I don't hear from you in a week or two, I tend to just go on about my life. And I might feel hurt, but I might not reach out either.
Yeah.
So it's like, so around the adoption thing, I found both of my birth families, and it's sometimes hard to remember that I now have sisters and brothers that I can reach out to when I, and so one of my half brothers and I inadvertently didn't speak for a couple of years just because I'm not used to him being in my life.
Yes.
And
so that, I can imagine that's a big piece for you to overcome, this piece. And look, I would have to say 100% of the women that I'm working with are incredibly self-reliant. Like that's their thing. They're really good at taking care of themselves. That they're wonderful, amazing women. And a huge part of the journey to calling in soulmate love is learning to surrender and receive, allow somebody else, well, not just into your heart, but just allow them physically into your life, allow them to help you, allow them to support you. It's a big part of it.
Absolutely. And we're just, I grew up in the 60s and early 70s, and feminism was a big, big part of that. I don't know how much it is in Australia. But in the States, that was, the ERA era. It was also Vietnam and civil rights. And so the whole idea of coming through and having a career and being a career woman and doing all of those things were really part of who we were. And so even though I got married right out of college, I was always working in the workplace other than a couple of years after my son was born. And it was really important for us to do that. And I was sort of the generation that you can have it all.
Yes.
Yeah, but you don't know how much that's taking out of you sometimes.
Right. Yes.
And how much you need to rely on someone else for that emotional support.
When you share that, again, my language would be learning to activate the feminine energy. So we've learned, it's been very indoctrinated to do life from the masculine energy, which is all about, making things happen and taking care of stuff and, onwards and upwards, and not allowing yourself to be supported and not allowing yourself to receive.
So here's the interesting part of that. A lot of that feminine energy and that cyclic, there's cyclic energy, there's the caregiving, caretaking role that so many women have. And there's a biological imperative underneath that says while we are in those childbearing, child rearing years, we need to have a tribe around us, because taking care of children is a complex and difficult process.
Yeah.
And then
Well, it takes a community really to bring up a
it takes
child,
a
doesn't it?
village.
It takes a
It takes
village.
a
Yeah.
village.
Yeah.
And yet we're being pushed into this masculine role. And then we hit menopause and our bodies say, okay, enough of this estrogen junk. I would say,
Which estrogen, which means taking care of everybody else.
which is what's been pushing us to take care of everybody else. And it says,
Yeah.
put yourself first. And we sort of drop out of that. And it says, put yourself first for once
Yeah.
in your life, put your needs at least on a par with everybody else's. And sometimes we have to put ourselves first. And it's the first time in our lives that our body is not fighting back against that.
Yes.
So we become more masculine, sort of more straight line thinking and more straight line doing. But then we get to choose. Then there's this choice that says, this is what feminine can be in the absence of that biological imperative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, actually. It does. And what I feel like what you're speaking to is there's different aspects to the feminine, and there is the caretaking piece, which can be quite disempowered feminine, though, because that's where the people-pleasing codependency pieces come in, and feeling guilty for putting yourself first. And I feel like, I actually really do feel like midlife menopause is inviting us to bring forward our empowered feminine, which is about taking care of ourselves first and learning to be supported and not have to be the one that's doing all the things for everybody else. And I think that's key to next level love.
It's
as well.
Learning to be supportive and in a relationship that you care for him or her, and
both.
Right. And they care for you in return. And so it's a more equal relationship. And I think that's really super important, is that we realize that our relationships aren't the same.
Yes, absolutely. Would you say that the work that you did leading into meeting your now husband has contributed to you having a more empowered relationship? I mean, if you were to compare this relationship now that you're in and the marriage that you're in, and consider the work that you did in between, what's the difference, and what have you created because of that work?
I think I am more committed to making it work. So it's a more deliberate relationship, if that makes any sense, because he is super committed to making it work. He is super involved in this relationship, so that's super helpful for me, because it doesn't let me run away. Yes, there's still that.
Yeah, well, and then this is probably a piece that you will be healing layer by layer by layer until the end of time, right? And I know it's the same for me with trusting the masculine. I healed that in order to call in an empowered man, and I'm healing it continually within the relationship.
You don't live one way for 45, 48 years,
right,
and then just turn it off. So
yeah, exactly.
It keeps coming up, and it keeps coming up. And so
when you say, can I pick up on something? When you said you're more committed now in this relationship, just tell me a little bit more about what you mean when you say you're more committed.
So when my first marriage was, in a lot of ways, I was sort of raised as a 50s kid. My parents were older, and I had a lot of cousins who were much older than I was.
Mm.
My cousins were my babysitters. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, they were 15, 20 years older than I was.
Mm.
And so I grew up in a household and in a environment that kind of did the um, twin sets and pearls kind of thing.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I wound up being a hippie in the late 60s and early 70s, so it was kind of schizophrenic. Um,
Yes.
but I think my sense of the relationship was, you fall in love, you get married, and that's the way it stays forever. And I wasn't aware of how it was changing, and I wasn't
Mm.
aware of the stresses that were starting to appear in it.
Mhm.
Um, so while I was expecting it to last, I wasn't
Mm.
doing anything to make it last, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. It feels like you didn't have like using the word commitment. It feels like you didn't have a conscious commitment to uh,
To grow.
like an awareness of change, to commitment to growth, to doing your work, to him doing his work, to doing your work together, to
Right.
move with it. Like it's gonna keep changing.
Mhm.
Okay, so there's a commitment to that growth. And you said that you've continued your personal development work
Right.
now that you're in the relationship. So you're committed to yourself and you're committed to the both of you. And
Right.
so is he.
And I will say that I think he has grown a lot.
Mm.
Um, he is not he is not a deliberate studier.
Mm-hmm.
So, I do a lot of work with manifestation and law of attraction and things like that,
Yeah.
and he is hands down the best unconscious manifester I've ever seen, because
Amazing.
when he
Yeah.
wants something to happen, he just simply expects it to happen. That's why we live in Louisiana. But I
Why?
think
What? Because he always wanted to come back there?
he moved to my house because I owned a house and he was renting.
Mm-hmm.
And when my mom passed away in 2010, he moved to Alabama with me and never lost sight of the fact that this was where he wanted to live.
Mm.
So, uh, 2 years later, someone out of the blue offered me full price for my house. And we
Love
said,
that.
let's go to Louisiana. Didn't have a I didn't have a strong enough tie to Alabama to say, let's stay here. So
Mm.
it wasn't a place that I was particularly, and I turned out to be a great decision.
Yeah. So that was always his vision, and then he ended up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So little did he know. Yeah, he's an amazing manifester.
He's absolutely, I'm pretty sure he manifested our relationship more than,
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I mean, isn't that the masculine makes it happen, the feminine allows it.
yeah.
Right. And you had moved into a way more receptive,
I had moved
allowing,
into a,
surrendered
yeah,
place, focused just on feeling good, having fun, loving your adventure sports, taking care of yourself, falling back in love with yourself, doing your healing work, healing the inner child. Like that was your focus, and you just
right.
allowed him to come find you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny
Yeah.
because the first summer we were together, we met at Halloween, and then that
Mm.
following summer we went up to North Carolina from here, where there is a ton of fabulous whitewater kayaking, and spent a week
Mm.
in uh, up there. And when we came home, and we separated from each other, separated to go our separate ways. He said, "I love you" for the first time. I think he said the look on my face was just pure terror. because while we were having fun, I wasn't really sure I was ready to settle down again and
Mm,
be in love. But
mm.
it turned out that then
How,
there's the
how did
Katrina
you
story.
how did you I know we're nearly on time, but I don't want to I really want to hear the answer to this. How did you handle that? So, you know, you said you were petrified when he said I love you, and you weren't too sure if you were ready yet, because I can imagine you're still healing from your marriage. And so how did you handle that?
I decided just to go with it. Not, I didn't say it back. I didn't feel like I
Mm-hmm.
had to. And what then transpired, this was 2005. And for those of you who know the story of Louisiana in 2005, that was July. And then in late August, I actually took a job here in Louisiana as a contract person. And I was traveling back and forth between here. And I was supposed to be traveling back and forth between here and Alabama for the weekend. And the first week I was here, he decided to drive home with me from here. And we went home. We went to Alabama, and Katrina came here. And
Right.
I think that was sort of the real turning point in our relationship, because at that point he needed a lot of support. He watched much of his home city wash away,
Wow.
and
Oof.
it was an incredibly difficult time for anyone from here.
Sure.
And I was his support system. And I kind of realized, I think, that we could rely on each other.
Wow. That's really beautiful. That's really, really beautiful. Yeah. And you'd got to a place where you could allow yourself to rely on him.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
he'd clearly built a level of trust with you, because this is a guy that's done it on his own his whole life.
Right.
And you'd built enough trust together that he could equally allow himself to rely on you. So both of you your feminine came forward actually to allow the other to support.
Yeah.
Yeah, very beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And one final piece from you, that what else did the work you did to, you know, in between marriages, that work you did, how has that affected the quality of this relationship now?
I think it gives me the stamina, if you will, to to get through the stuff where things feel uncomfortable. Where I might run at other times, I might have run earlier and just withdrawn from the situation. I'm sure I did that plenty of times in my first relationship. But I'm here for the long haul.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's real testament to the work you've done to notice when that familiar, and it would be a very familiar feeling, comes up of I'm out of here, goodbye.
I'm out of here for the day.
I'm gone, or I'm closing my heart, I'm shutting down, I'm not going to be about, like, that would be such strong programming for you. So you've clearly done a lot of work to heal that, to be open to the kind of love that you wanted. Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing. Beautiful. You're proving that it is possible. You're proving it's possible in part 2 of life. You're proving it's possible while you're going through menopause.
And after menopause.
And after menopause, yeah. And I love that the 2 of you have just written a book together. I mean,
it was a lot of fun to do. I had to go back and get it. get into his mind and see what he needed to
Yeah.
know to understand me, and what
Yeah.
he needed to not do. So
Mm.
really quickly, guys are fixers often. They want to fix
Yes.
things. So
Yes.
we want to just have somebody listen to us.
Yeah.
And it was teaching him, sometimes you just need to listen. I don't care what the answer is.
Yeah.
You just need to listen to me. And he's really receptive to that.
Do you know, I'd like to get the link to that book and share it in the comments of this, because I think that would be really helpful to a lot of women.
It is.
And men. Well, for men. It's for men as well. Well, it is for men, really, isn't it? Is it for men?
I did write it so that I assumed that most women would find it and give it to their husbands. And it is available on Amazon.
Okay, and it's called?
It's called Where Is My Wife and What Have You Done with Her?
Amazing. By Jeanne Andrus.
And Jeanne Andrus.
And Jeanne and Jessie Andrus. Perfect. On Amazon. Great.
Yes.
A powerful and important resource. When I first met my husband, I gently invited him to read The Way of the Superior Man by David Dada. Mm-hmm. And I thought this would be interesting. How he receives this book will be interesting to know the longevity of this relationship. And he freaking loved that book, and he's read it back to back multiple times. So it's very helpful.
Yeah.
Really good. Jeanne, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for getting up so horribly early in the morning for us. And thank you for being such an inspiration.
I think it's been a lot of fun, Katie, and I really have enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, you've inspired me to go and get fit. Because one of the pieces before I met James, and so this is going back a few years before I met him, when I turned 40, I decided to get fit and healthy, and that's when I started weightlifting, and I got a personal trainer, and I was on it, and I kind of let it go since being in a relationship. So I need to get back on it. I know, it's so easy to let it go. So you inspired me that, if you can do it in your late 40s, so can I.
Well, it's so.
And you continue to.
It's been
Thank you. Thank you. Lots of love, darling. Thank you for the amazing work you're doing in the world as well.
Thank you.
Oh, and thanks everybody who could join us live. And if you've watched the replay, don't forget to type #replay and let me know you've seen it. And we'll be back tomorrow with another amazing, inspiring interview on how you can call in love in part 2 of your life.
And
sending you loads of love.
Not be watching live.
No, you'll be sleeping. Bye, everybody. See you later.
Bye.
Thanks, Jeanne. Bye.
Bye.